The Canadian Securities Exchange presents your go-to source for trends in junior and small cap markets. Each month, join host Anna Serin and financial expert Bruce Campbell in partnership with StoneCastle.
Welcome to the market this month. I'm Anna Serin, Director of Listings Development with the Canadian Securities Exchange, and today's episode comes to you from the beautiful Perth, Australia. It's been an exciting month for us at the CSE as we mark a major milestone, the completion of our acquisition of the National Stock Exchange of Australia, or NSX. The NSX, which was previously a publicly listed company, has now been delisted and is fully owned by the CSE. It continues to operate locally here in Australia under the leadership of Max Cunningham, CEO of the NSX, and his highly experienced team based in Sydney. Over the past 2 weeks, Richard Carlton, CEO of the CSE, and I have been traveling across Australia with Max and the NSX team on an extensive roadshow, meeting with brokers, legal and accounting firms, investment bankers, and advisors. The response has been tremendous. There's a real sense of excitement around what this partnership means for the future of the NSX, the Australian capital markets, and the growing bridge between Canada and Australia's vibrant issuer communities. Adding to the momentum, ASIC, Australia's national regulator, has now formally recognized the CSE as one of the small handful of designated foreign exchanges, a major step that makes it even easier for CSE-listed issuers to engage with the Australian investors and explore dual market opportunities. Already, we're seeing a strong pipeline of companies, especially in the resource and technology sectors, from both Australia and Canada. Many in the market have told us that this is long overdue, that Australia needed a marketplace designed for startup and growth stage issuers, something that has long been a part of the CSE's DNA. Today, we will be connecting with both Richard Carlton and Max Cunningham to talk about what's next for the NSX and how this acquisition is set to shape the future of Australia's capital markets. And of course, I'll be joined once again by Bruce Campbell from StoneCastle Investment Management to break down the market this month. We'll take a look at gold, which has seen its fair share of volatility lately, not unusual for this time of year, but also worth digging into what it might signal moving forward. We'll also discuss the US dollar, which seems to be showing early signs of a rally. The question is whether that strength can hold as we close out the year. From there, we'll turn to investor sentiment, where the latest Schwab Investment Movement Index gives us an interesting read on how investors are positioning themselves in what continues to be a cautious but opportunity-filled market. And finally, we'll look at Bitcoin, which has been choppy of late, but still cryptocurrency-related issuers have managed to outperform. We'll talk about why that is and what the seasonal patterns could be suggesting as we move further into Q4. It's a big episode today, part market breakdown, part milestone moment for the CSE and the NSX, all coming to you from the heart of Australia's resource capital. Let's dive in. All right, Bruce, welcome to this month's episode of The Market This Month. This is so exciting to connect with you while I am in gorgeous Perth, Australia. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. Yeah, it's really awesome because you're actually a day ahead of me. It's like Back to the Future kind of vibe going on because you're in Perth and I'm in Kelowna.
That's right. So I can tell you the future. So we should do some good stock picks today, don't you think?
Yeah, exactly.
Listen, thank you so much for joining us for the November episode of The Market This Month. I do appreciate that you stole yourself away from a very important ball game that's happening. By the time this goes live, we'll know the result of that, so stay tuned. And we're going to jump into the big transaction that occurred this week, which was the CSE acquiring the NSX in Australia. We've been busy touring the country, myself, Richard Carlton, our fearless leader and CEO, and Max Cunningham, the CEO of the NSX. We've had a great reception. We will dive into all things Australia later, but let's dive into the markets, Bruce. Let's talk about gold. It wouldn't be a market this month if we weren't talking about gold.
Yeah, it seems like we always go in themes. We talked about inflation for a number of times there, and now we're talking about gold. And I mean, it's been on this fairly steady move up through most of the last really 12 months. And you could probably even say 18 months. But just in the last few days, it's been a lot more volatile. And anytime that happens, you get proponents from both sides saying like, oh, it's got more to go. No, it's topped out. It's going to drop. And, everyone's going to lose their money who's in gold. And I see something that's a little bit different. Few things that we noticed here. One is that there's something that's equivalent to the VIX, which is the volatility index for the stock market, but for the gold market. And that actually has been fairly steady as gold was rising. And now with the volatility, it's of course spiked up, which makes sense. It spiked up to around the 35 range. It's now down, as of the time of the recording here, down to the, sort of 22 range. And normally it likes to sit kind of sub 20 when we see, gold just kind of move in smaller increments over a day-to-day period. So that was kind of one interesting thing that I've seen. The second is that I saw a stat that showed that when gold is down by 10% over a 6-day period, which is exactly what's just happened, there's been 9 other instances of that in the past. And when that's happened, we've actually seen gold up higher 2 months later, 100% of the time. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens this time over the next couple of months.
Very interesting. Now, let me ask you this. With only a 10% drop, which I know in the scheme of things is large, we've had such a run on gold. Does this feel like something we should be concerned about?
Well, it really doesn't. I saw a meme maybe about halfway through this drop, and it
Sorry,
was a
Bruce, do you use memes as a part of your due diligence process?
we don't, but it's always
It's not
entertaining
formal.
what traders send around when either we're scared or bored or both, right?
Good to know. Good to
Um,
know. So it's not part of the formal due diligence process. I like that.
yeah, yeah, no, it's not officially in the folder. Yeah. So I saw this meme and it was pretty funny because it was a picture of Matthew McConaughey from a couple different movies, and one he was like super excited, and the next one he was like super depressed. And it said, gold on October 2nd when it went through, whatever it was, 4,100, and then it was gold when it went through, October 26th when it went through 4,100. So he was like happy when it went through 4,100 on the way up, and of course sad on the way down. So you're right. The reality of the situation is that it's gone up so much
Yeah.
that this really is only taking it back about a month's time from where it was. So it's really,
Okay.
really not retraced that much.
Okay, I'm not going to be too sad yet. Actually, interestingly enough, we just did a week in Sydney, and there's kind of the CBD, they call it, the Central Business District, is where all the financial firms are, and that is where the bullion is. And the lineup of sellers and buyers around that building was unbelievable. The whole week that we were there, it was a long lineup of people buying and selling physical gold, which I thought was interesting.
And of course, all of the bears have actually pointed to pictures of that in Australia,
Oh, really?
showing all the people lined up and saying, like, this has to be the top because look at all these people lined up. But what they don't realize is some of those people are buying and some of those people are selling. They're not just buying.
Yeah, there was a lineup for the sellers and a lineup for the buyers. What I thought was interesting was they didn't seem like the financial community that would have been in those buildings where we were. These were the general investment community.
Which line was longer, Anna?
Oh, that's a good question. I should have paid attention. I didn't know which one was the sell and which one was the buy, but I should have checked. I'm going to ask our Australian friends if they know, and I'll get back to you.
Okay, great.
Okay, let's talk about the US dollar because again, it's not the market this month. If we are not tracking that dollar, what is happening?
Yeah, I mean, the US dollar has been fairly weak since really just a little bit before Liberation Day, which was, going back to April. And just in the last little while, it's kind of looks like it's formed a bit of a bottom here. So it wouldn't be too surprising. Gold typically is inverse, moves inverse to the US dollar, that, as the dollar looks like it may have bottomed, that we're also seeing some strength in the dollar, and we're seeing some weakness in gold.
Right. Okay. And so, I mean, I feel like it's hard to tell what's going to happen with the US dollar right now because there are so many push and pull, movements around it, right?
There are, and then, kind of in the back of your mind, you also have to remember that the US politicians, specifically Donald Trump and Scott Bessent, have both talked about how they would like a lower dollar just because that makes them more competitive. And so, they're certainly, if not doing it intentionally, are, talking the dollar into that position.
It'll be interesting to see what happens there. Okay, let's talk about sentiment, investor sentiment. So, you look through the lens of something called the Schwab Investment Movement Index. So, please tell us first what that is.
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about sentiment, and we look at lots of different sentiment tools that are out there. We've looked at the National Association of Active Investment Managers in the US. We'll look at the American Association of Retired Individuals, so the AAII. We're looking at that. In this case, this is the Schwab Investor Movement Index. And so what that is Schwab's a big discount broker in the US. And historically, the thought is that the retail broker or the retail investor who deals with someone like Schwab tends to be late to come in, and they tend to sort of get out at the very bottom.
My
And
a
so
little less sophisticated investor, right?
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And so what Schwab has done is they've actually tracked, and this goes back to when it was TD that owned it. They track what those investors are doing as far as how much money they're pouring into the market, and kind of how topped up they are in their accounts, and how speculative they're getting with their securities. And they have a formula to calculate this. But the thing that was interesting was that back when the markets peaked out in 2021, that the reading on that index was about 75. And of course, the higher, the more speculative and kind of the more toppy the market is. And
Yeah.
right now it's only around 45, even though the S&P is hitting a new high. So it's showing you that, there's lots of different ways to measure sentiment, but one of the ones where we're looking at, those non-sophisticated retail investors is showing us that sentiment is actually not overdone here at all.
Okay, interesting. So more movement to come.
Yeah, that's certainly the thought, right? Is that,
Okay.
if we continue to see breadth, there's obviously opportunity for the market to still broaden out and go higher.
I love it. I love it. I hope so. Okay, let's talk about Bitcoin. So Bitcoin issuers are outperforming right now, even with the Bitcoin being a little choppy these days. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, just like gold, Bitcoin's been rather choppy here over the last month. It hit a new high in the 120s and then sold off to almost 100,000. But the interesting thing is that a lot of the Bitcoin sensitive companies and the Bitcoin mining companies and some of the treasury companies, and as well as some of the companies that are invested in Bitcoin or have ETFs or wealth management in Bitcoin, have done extremely well here, and we've really seen them outperform. So over the last month, there's a basket that Goldman Sachs monitors, and it's the Bitcoin sensitive stocks, and that's actually up 25% over the last month here. While Bitcoin has actually dropped.
Interesting. I mean, it seems like one of those asset classes that just always has a little bit of that choppiness to it, right?
Yeah, there's certainly lots of torque there. It moves fast both directions, and it's probably not going to change anytime soon, just because of the nature of the access that different investors have to it, and the different investment classes, and the fact that it still isn't that well institutionally owned, and
That's
that
right.
really takes away that bid when things get weak.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, before we get into the big CSC news that we're going to talk about this week or this month, let's tell our viewers what they can expect next month or what they should be paying attention to in the news.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, one of the big things to be watching here is interest rates. We're going to have the interest rate decision later on this week. So this show will be aired after that, but we're going to have the interest rate decision from the Federal Reserve. And then that will also kind of lead us to what's going to happen later on in the year. Will there be another cut in December? And so that's one thing that we'll want to keep an eye on for sure. And then we're right in the thick of earnings season here right now. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with those corporate earnings and from the guidance as well. So far, it's been actually quite strong. especially in technology. And that's been, a driver here for the last really kind of 36 months, but it continues to be strong and we continue to get good numbers.
I mean, I have to say on that note, I'm pretty excited at the idea of seeing some more tech stuff come to the market. It's always been a space, especially in the startup and growth space within the capital markets, that we don't, the resource sector has always been, such a big component, but I do love seeing the tech stuff come.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
one more area for investors to look at, right?
Well, and I think that, the next generation of investor, they have a deeper understanding of the new technology that's coming to
Oh, yeah.
market. They have a bigger interest in AI applications, in blockchain, and anything that's related to crypto. So, that brings more retail investors to the market. That makes me happy.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what we want to see.
Speaking of what makes me happy, it has been a really fantastic 2 weeks in Australia. I wish that you were here with me. Maybe next year when I come, you need to come and we can just we can do a traveling roadshow of the market this month, every day of our findings. But we will be bringing in Richard and Max as part of this month's episode, and I'll be having a quick chat with them after this. But I wanted to get your thoughts on this. So the CSE has acquired the NSX, the National Stock Exchange of Australia. It was a publicly listed company. We have now bought it completely and delisted it. It is now part of the CSE family. It will operate, as its own entity in Australia, but we do see a huge amount of crossover opportunity. And it's very nice for our issuers that are desperate or have been very intrigued about accessing the Australian markets to have, a safe hands to pass them over to. Maybe you could just give me some thoughts, Bruce, your thought on kind of the growing desire and appetite for global access for Canadian issuers, and dual listing opportunities.
I mean, from a portfolio management standpoint, anytime you get more access to capital and more liquidity, that's the perfect formula, right? And I mean, that's exactly what this does, is it's just allowing Canadian and Australian listed companies to, work together with, through the two exchanges to get listings in each of those different countries. And so I think it's fantastic. And it also is a bit of a trend as well. I mean, if you think about, globalization, this year it's been, a real year of like tariffs and like everything's kind of being brought back in. And this is like, no, let's continue on with the globalization initiative that the world's been working on for so many years now. It's fantastic to see. I think from a portfolio management standpoint, anytime you can have, access and broader communication, it's the way to go.
It's the way to go. I think the other thing that makes this so unique is, we've seen exchanges enter different marketplaces before, but I think what makes this stand out a little bit is that it is, creating access in multiple jurisdictions with a similar startup and growth, lower cost of capital approach. And I think that's quite unique, and it's definitely something that is very welcomed in both marketplaces. So I'm excited to see what comes next from it. Listen, Bruce, it is always so wonderful to talk to you, and I've missed you, and I'm glad that I got to connect with you while I'm in Australia. Next month, we will both be in Canada, and we will break down what happens. I guess next month's edition will be December. We will be talking all things year-end. Can you believe that?
I know, time is flying, isn't it?
It's amazing. It's amazing. Well, I hope I get to see you in person next month. We will now bring in Max and Richard, but Bruce, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, have a great rest of your trip there.
Thank you. I'm now joined by the CSC CEO, Richard Carlton, and the NSX CEO, Max Cunningham. Thank you for joining me, gents.
Great to be here. Pleasure.
It's been a very exciting 2 weeks here in Australia. We did a week in Sydney. We are now completing a week in Perth. And we just came off the cusp of the acquisition of the National Stock Exchange of Australia last week in Sydney. So let's just talk about the bridge that we are trying to build and what that's going to look like.
Well, thank you, Anna. And I have to say we've received an incredibly warm welcome from the financial community in Australia. I think there's a real understanding that there's need for competitive market services, particularly those that are tailored to the needs of early stage companies in Australia. And of course, as we announced this transaction back in May, we've been getting a lot of interest from our Canadian issuers and international issuers who are listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange about the opportunities to access the Australian public capital markets, whether it's for capital formation, secondary market liquidity, and the opportunity to raise additional funds. So one of the key areas of focus as we round out the integration of the organizations following the acquisition is to ensure that those opportunities are as efficient and low cost as possible.
Absolutely, Max. Maybe you can touch on how this is a bit of a unique offering now in Australia.
Yeah, look, I think to firstly echo what Richard said, it's pretty rare, I think, you do a deal like this where you get all stakeholders like fully supportive behind it. And I think that's partly because, to Richard's point, everyone recognises there's a real gap in the market, particularly that support that smaller companies need. I think, a consistent rule framework for getting listed, and also support from the exchange and broking community after they've done that. You guys have been doing that successfully for 10 years, and I think people are recognising now that NSX has got, being part of the CSE family, we're going to have the runway for investment, and we're going to have, I think, the support from you guys across a range of different services, from marketing to technology, and to people on the ground. And I think to be able to represent, NSX in Canada, we'll also be doing the same thing for CSE in Australia. And I think there's incredible opportunities for collaboration and cross-border connectivity.
I will be raising the NSX flag in Canada all the time.
We get some friendship pins for
right.
our logo.
That's right. Okay, Richard, on the topic of the community being very welcoming to this transaction, maybe you can touch on how the regulators feel about it.
Well, that's actually been one of the, I won't say surprising, but gratifying aspects of this transaction, because right from the first, ASIC has been extremely supportive, very efficient in their review of the transaction, as well as, of course, us being designated as a foreign exchange, one of a small handful of globally recognized marketplaces in Australia. And I was being completely candid with Chairman Joe Longo the other evening when he joined us to open the new office in Sydney, that he and his team provided a tremendously high level of service as we worked through this transaction. And I'm not normally one who's tremendously complimentary to the regulatory community always. And as I say, but I say that really, yes, with my heart, that working with ASIC was truly a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, obviously, one of the things Richard talks about on the CSE journey is people, and I think over the last 12 months, we've managed to rebuild the bench strength at NSX, and I think ASIC recognises that. A lot of those people have deep market experience, and I think we respect the role the regulator has to play in the market, but I think that they have really, really engaged with us in what I would call a serious manner, and taken us seriously, and we can't really ask for more than that.
One thing that's come up in our conversations is, when Richard, joined the CSE as CEO, it was the team that he built,
yep,
with people with deep backgrounds in it. And that really is what made us stand out. And I feel like you've done the same. Your team is incredible. I'm very excited to see them get out there and execute. Maybe you could touch on, Max, a little bit about why Canadian issuers are excited and have an appetite to access the Australian markets.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Well, as you know, you were there. We were in Beaver Creek about 2 months ago, and it was pretty extraordinary for me to have issuers trying to track us down to just talk about this transaction. Look, I think it's a nice feeling. Like I felt a bit like a fifth Beatle or something, And but I will say this: I think a lot of the people that you meet that are running these companies that are listed on yourself and other venture markets in Canada, they usually are founders that have listed multiple companies, and historically there's been a pathway to list in Canada, yep, and then seek secondary or follow-on capital from Australia. And I think due to tightening of regulatory controls, or perhaps more importantly, inconsistent regulatory outcomes and decisions, has seen either the cost of doing that go up, or at the end of the day, I think we all know, we've all been around a little while, the most important thing in my experience is people want consistency. from the market, and nothing is more important than that from the market operator. And
Transparency, consistency,
absolutely,
and low cost of capital is a nice
absolutely.
addition.
And I think that's been absent, and I think people see that gap, And the interesting thing is, I don't think you meet any of these issuers that don't have an Australian connection. Sometimes they're listed in Canada and they have Australian operations, or they're based in Toronto, operations in BC, but they've got Australian engineers or geos or whatever, and quite often Australian shareholders. And the flip side applies also to a lot of the mining companies we've got down here. They'll have operations in Canada or Canadian shareholders. So anything that we can do to bring those markets together and have those shareholders or bring new shareholders on, I think that's the feedback we're getting from Canadian issuers in general, but with a specific emphasis on miners.
Yeah, absolutely. On that note, Richard and I had the pleasure of connecting with one of our issuers that is based in Fremantle in the Perth district, and it's an incredible technology company, Critical Infrastructures Technologies. And so I was surprised at how big the CSC's Rolodex is here in Australia, just how many participants on the CSC are out here. Richard, maybe you could just touch a little bit on, because this is the big question I get asked. So if I list with the CSC, does that mean I just get to list with the NSX? Now, what is going to be the dual listing process?
Well, I'm afraid it's not quite that simple. Of course, we have a tremendous shared legal heritage with Australia, common law jurisdictions both. And the principles around Australian and Canadian company law are very, very similar, and the same is true on the security side. However, there's a little bit of work that's required to provide a more streamlined approach for companies that are already reporting issuers in Canada, currently subject to quarterly reporting requirements, for example. And although we're moving to a pilot program for some eligible issuers to be able to report semi-annually instead. But basically, there's a lot of work that's required to, and this is one of the things we'll be focusing on as Max and the team at the NSX look to update their listings policies and manual over the course of the next 12 to 14 months or so. But there's still a lot of things that we have to do to get those reporting requirements harmonized. And so, but as we go through that process, we'll be always looking for opportunities to not have people duplicate things unnecessarily, or otherwise to reduce or minimize the management distraction required to maintain the listing in both jurisdictions.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to be, the CNC and CSC and NSX. We're going to have a very similar culture on either side. We're going to approach things, I think, very similarly. Obviously, Australia does have some differences to Canada, but I think this is such a win-win for anyone wanting to access both markets. Max, maybe you could just end off with what's next for the NSX.
Look, I think what's next for us is I think one of the multiple things that we learned about what were the journey that got CSC to where it is now is really having a scalable trading platform. So we're well advanced on that, and hopefully we'll be making an announcement in the next few weeks on that. I think that'll really, really enhance the broker connectivity, the ability to roll out new products. So I think that's it in the medium term. Short term, we're confident that I think we will see before the end of the year a few more companies move across from the ASX, and I think we're also confident that we'll get one or two Canadian issuers, and the pipeline for 2026 is looking healthy.
Fantastic. Okay, for our Canadian and American viewers, where can they access information about the NSX? Where can we find info about you?
nsx.com.au.
And you're on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, please follow us on LinkedIn.
And you have a podcast coming out.
Yeah, Ticker Talk. It's launching on the 7th of November, Australian time, and it'll be available on YouTube and all good places where podcasts are released.
Are we going to become podcast competitors?
No, partners, I think. You might be a guest on the program if you are.
A healthy sibling rivalry wouldn't,
Listen,
Richard's our guest on our Christmas episode, so there's a few nice surprises.
So watch out for that.
They made me wear a hat.
I heard about the hat. I heard about the hat. Listen, it is such a pleasure to travel around with you. I mean, the reception that we've had the past 2 weeks really does, it makes you feel enlightened about the acquisition and about the two of us coming together. So I'm really excited to see what happens next. We're going to have team from the NSX come out to Canada in the coming months. We will be coming back here. So stay tuned.
Richard's moving to Perth.
Richard's moving to Perth. He hasn't told Jane yet.
I have volunteered to become an unpaid advocate for the Tourism and Convention Bureau of Western Australia. It's gorgeous.
It is beautiful here. It really is. Thank you again, gents.
Thanks.
Thank you.